Hello and welcome to my little Saturalia special. Today we're gonna go back a bit and revisit the characters of Morrowind. While I would have wanted to go a bit more in depth on some NPCs, I've decided to branch that subject off into its own video in order to keep our focus on the festivities. What exactly do I mean by this? Well, as you might know, the average Bethesda game has a lot of NPCs that go unused, only ever being found in the files or some faraway test cell. But that trend only really started with Oblivion. As in Morrowind, the files were relatively well cleaned, ensuring that most of the game's good content was effectively wiped from the data, which, if anything, always implies a more structured team effort in cleaning up the final product to me. In the base game Morrowind, the unused characters don't exceed the double digits, while the test characters barely get there in the first place. There's always gonna be characters that are mentioned in the game but don't exist in the files, but that's just something that's bound to happen in a massive undertaking like this. However, as we get into Morrowind's big expansions, we'll find that once again the amount of NPCs cut is quite limited. In the first expansion, Tribunal, there are a total of 5 NPCs that go unused, ranging from average commoner to, I guess, kinda interesting. You have Drovaran, a level 10 Khajiit commoner, just wearing normal clothes. Then there are also Durvarelas and Edreriten, a level 20 merchant and bookseller respectively. Again, both are just decked out in common clothing. They don't even carry any special merchandise. And then you also have Hulgard, a level 37 male Nord barbarian. Funnily enough, all Nords in this expansion are male and of the barbarian class. Hulgard's inventory is completely empty, although that's more so due to him being an unfinished NPC rather than a character trait like it is with Forstag the Sweltering. Due to his level, he might have been an earlier version of Loggar the Bloody, who sat at level 35, but that may just as well be a coincidence, as there is nothing that could possibly confirm that in the files. And then the most interesting character by far is called Minfar, which just screams Easter egg name to me. He's a male level 15 Breton Knight and a member of the Burn Vampire clan, with the notably high rank of Lord. This would make him the second highest ranked member in the entire game, behind the leader Rexel Byrne, as well as the only member of any of the Vampire clan to appear in one of the expansions. It's absolutely unknown what his role was, and he only carries an exquisite belt in his inventory, nothing else, so there are no further clues. Then the second expansion, Blood Moon, would give us one more cut character to look at, with a total of 6 NPCs going unused. These guys being even less developed than the ones from Tribunal. The only woman in the group is a level 44 Nord named Killy the Long. Based on her race and level, I assume she was meant to inhabit the Skull village, where she would have been the only one of Nightblade class. Besides this, there is nothing I can tell you about her, as her inventory is completely empty. That also goes for the second guy, Valgus Stadlilius. And for you Oblivion fans out there, yes, that is the male version of the last name Stadlilia you're probably familiar with from our cut content aficionado Restita. Again, based on his race, his guard class, and the fact that he's a trooper in the Imperial Legion faction, we can infer that he was meant to be one of the many legionaries guarding Fort Frostmoth, though once more, nothing else noteworthy can be discovered in the files about him. Then there are also 2 level 20 shipmasters, the Argonian Wind in his hair and the Nord Halvarar. These guys might have been intended to function as alternate fast travel options, as Blood Moon has very few, but then again, they might have been cut due to the Tursk and Skull village inhabitants not having any need for them. But they might have just as well been earlier versions of shipmasters we do encounter in the final game. Or they might have been intended for a completely different purpose. I honestly couldn't tell you. But then we finally get to the duo of which I can tell you some interesting things. Grandfather Frost and Singor. Grandfather Frost might just be one of the most well-known pieces of cut content from Morrowind, but hey, how many times can I talk about Christmas cut content from one game series, you know? So in the final release of Blood Moon, you can encounter Uncle Sweetshare, a crazy guy that spreads his gifts, which are moon sugar, i.e. drugs, which have made a lot of soldiers at the local fort either sick or dead. He also has an assistant named Mnashi that died, likely due to an overdose. How jolly. But based on what we can see here, originally Uncle Sweetshare was instead known as Grandfather Frost, who was a Breton rather than a Nord. He reuses Sokuchius Argala's bearded face and has a different robe, but is otherwise mostly identical. as both NPCs share the same class, level, spells and inventory, with another very minor difference. While Uncle Sweetshare and Nashi carry the song of Uncle Sweetshare, Grandfather Frost and Singor would have carried, yes, you guessed it, the song of Grandfather Frost, which is, again, almost identical. The script used by Uncle Sweetshare is still even known as Grandfather Frost script. Then there's also a line used during the quest which states that the culprit wasn't a Nord, which is likely a leftover of when he really wasn't one. And then there's also the case of their headwear, as both men wear a white Colovian fur helm, which was created for the expansion, as in the base game you had a standard Colovian fur helm, which was yellow. However, it seems that to hit the Santa connection even more, they wanted to have him wear a red Colovian helm, which does exist technically, but it goes unused and there is no actual red texture for the helm. It just reuses the base game texture. But besides all that, it seems that Grandfather Frost was replaced pretty early on. As there is no dialogue left for him, there are also no dialogue topics about either him or Singor to be found in the files or anywhere else. Oh, yeah, about Singor, in case you were wondering, he was just meant to be a dead body outside the workshop, just like Nashi. If I had to make a guess as to why exactly this was all changed, I suppose they didn't want to use a real life name for their cocaine addicted crazy man, and so they made him ever so slightly legally distinct. And whichever version you prefer, I suppose I just wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays from me.